Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I'm your host, Kieran, and today I'm sitting down with Christian Ortiz. So he is an Afro-Indigenous decolonial social scientist and technologist. I know those are a lot of words put together. Don't worry, we're going to break them down. I'm excited to talk about what that actually means. He's also the developer of Justice AIGPT. And essentially, Christian challenges how artificial intelligence is designed and asking who it truly serves and how it can be used to empower rather than erase communities of color. And what I love about this man is how he takes these big, complex ideas about tech, about identity, power, bias, and makes them so accessible for you and for I. So if you follow him on Instagram like I do, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He generates conversation on his platform that's not just about informing, but it's also about provoking reflection. And that's exactly what that's done for me every time I've gone on and been part of a conversation that he is sharing on his platform. He makes us pause and ask, like, who is building our future? And what stories are being left out? And what do we want to do about it? Especially those of us that belong to the BIPOC community. So in this conversation, I'm hoping Christian and I can explore his story, how he got to where he's at today, his upbringings, his experiences. He's a person of color, so I know there's a lot in between there. And what shaped the work he does today. And how all of us, you, I, and everyone in between can better understand these hidden biases that live inside the technologies we use every day and don't even know it. So this is what I'm really excited to crack a bit of a window for all of us. And those of us that are joining this conversation are like, ooh, technology and AI, and that's just not my world. I don't do it. That's cool. You do you. But here's the truth. It does us. It's all around us. It's everywhere. So whether you want to do it or not, it's happening on your mobile, when you're washing your hands, in a public washroom, and everything in between. So let's get into it. Let's welcome our guest, Christian. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are you today, sir?
Wow, I'm amazing. And thank you for that introduction. That was astonishing. I'm honored to be here. I appreciate it.
Is there anything you'd add? I always ask my guests, like maybe I know you are a family man as well. So anything that you want to add or any accomplishments that I didn't add in here, go for it.
No, I mean, I'm sure they'll come up in conversation later, but I am a papa. I'm a papa of four and proud papa of my four kids. And yeah, and the work that I do is for them. So that's the only thing that I would add. And, you know, I should say that more often than not.
I love that. Yes, it's all about our future and breaking these barriers that you and I maybe didn't grow up with or get a chance, or parents weren't able to for us. And those of us that are blessed that have kids, I think that's the beauty of it, is like, okay, it grounds us to think we're doing it for them. And a lot of times we get to say we're doing it with them, which is really, really, I think, enlightening as well. So should we get into it? Should we get to know a little bit about you?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to work backwards. So I want to start with, who was little Christian? So tell us about your roots, what growing up was like for you, maybe the kind of community that shaped you.
Yeah, and that is a fantastic question, because I think that is the one part that we sometimes forget to ask and reflect on, is where we came from. Who was it that conditioned us to believe in the way that we do? I was raised by a Puerto Rican mother who raised three boys on her own. I didn't get to meet my dad until a few years ago, which has been an amazing experience. But growing up in a Puerto Rican household, I am half Puerto Rican, half Mexican, who had no idea about my lineage, of course, growing up in the 80s and 90s. I was an 80s baby, an 80s kid, and a 90s kid. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, Hollywood. And we left right before the LA riots in the 90s, and we moved to New Jersey and New York, which gave me 6 years of another lived experience with so much diverse cultures and perspectives and chaos and trauma that you can only imagine. Ultimately, moving down to the South in Columbus, Georgia, in the South of the United States in the mid 90s, and I spent 25 years there. And right there was when I encountered my first real experience with racial injustice and bigotry, and opened my eyes in a way that I never thought it would open before. And even though that the South is way behind in terms of the rest of the world in the States by design. And then, I grew up as the byproduct of white supremacy, right? Like I grew up in a hyper patriarchal, misogynistic household fueled by machismo and the Catholic Church and all of these ideals that my mother was raised with, and my family, and most of our Latino and Black families are raised in, especially in church. And, we grew up around lots of internalized oppression, racism. I was othered in my own community and my own family, with my uncles calling me El Mexicano like it was a terrible thing, always giving me the side eye. And I never understood any of these things, right? We grew up in a time where we were mock accents and we were just making fun of the disabled folks. And I mean, it was just an atrocious time to be alive, and we didn't have the conversations or the competency to understand how problematic we were as a society. So I am the byproduct of all of this growing up, and I'm very open about it, because with the work that I do, I use my lived experience to say, if I can change, there's no way in hell that you can't change, right? And so living in the South led me into activism and into my adulthood, which, spawned into a million and one different things. But in terms of my roots and who I was as a little kid, I was a little nerdy Afro-Indigenous boy who had no idea about what he was surrounded by and all of the conditioning that he was taking in, and he was surviving, and he was a latchkey kid, and, all those things. And so there was a lot to learn. I was very shy. I was very introverted. And I always knew that I had a big purpose. I just didn't know what that was. I was a big dreamer of a kid. And so, I was a very, very confused child that carried a lot of things that I unpack later in life, thankfully.
Oh my goodness. I love how you talked about, I loved everything you said, but what I really love that you talked about openly was being that byproduct of growing up in an era where all the things that we were taught in our home, socially, media, pop culture, everything, today we look back and you and I must have grown up in the exact same time, because it's exactly what you said of, oh my gosh, we can't say that, we can't say that. And what you're like one of very few people that will openly mention exactly that and encourage the conversation, because a lot of us or the people that I've been around don't want to go there because there's a lot of embarrassment, right? And the only place we go to is, oh, can't listen to that artist anymore, oh, we can't do that, and oh, can't watch that TV show. And I love what you say around, if I grew up with all of these things, making up this little boy, this little man, and the man you are today, then how can the rest of us not want to go there too? So what do you think is the difference between someone like you, who's like, yeah, this is how I grew up, but I'm doing something about it, versus those that are like, nope, I'm not going there. I won't go there. It's just a joke. It's still a joke, or whatever it is that, those people that grew up in the same time as us will continue to kind of say. What's the difference for you?
It's a fantastic question. I think a lot of it stemmed from is a mixture of things, right? I think growing up, I was always super curious. Like, the world never made sense to me. Like, I would hear my mother, who was the daughter of an African woman born through late stage slavery in the Caribbean in the 1900s, and a Spanish father with Puerto Rican roots and Spanish roots, make racist comments about Asian and Black people. And it never made sense to me. My brother, who's full Puerto Rican, making racist remarks about Mexican people, and I'm half Mexican, never made sense to me. My entire life, growing up in the church, I was prevented from asking the right questions, right? I'd get shut down. I'd get my ass beat for a multitude of things. It wasn't that I think the biggest part of it was I always lived with the question of why? Why does that exist? That makes no sense to me. I'll figure it out later in life, I'm sure. But right now, this makes no sense to me. So I never went along with whatever conditioning was around me because it just didn't make sense. My mother also, to the second part of this, I think what really forged who I was and who I've always been is my mother was the epitome of I don't need no man to, whatever. I'm this independent woman. And she always taught me, regardless. I always say she taught me lessons without having conversations, right? Of lessons. It was the purpose wasn't to teach me a lesson, but she taught me lessons in what she would say. And one of the things she always said, she would always tell me, it doesn't matter who anybody is. Don't ever let anybody shut you down. Don't ever let anybody dim your light, silence you. Never succumb to anybody's bullshit. I mean, she would tell me that. She was like, even me. And then it backfired because even when I'd argue with her, she was just like, how dare you talk to me like that? I was like, you said, even you. But what it did is it reinforced this. I don't know what else to call it outside of this badassery that manifested from her, where she took no shit from anybody. Literally, it didn't matter who you were. She's a little 4 foot nothing firebomb that there was people feared her, right? Because of who she was and how she survived. But what it did is it really reinforced something in me to literally say, no, 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 I'm going to lean into my conviction and what I believe is right. And if I have to use myself as an example of how I deconstructed, which, mind you, my deconstruction from all of that mess was brutal, right? The moment that I realized that, oh my gosh, I've been a douchebag for half my life, if not majority of my life, things need to change, then I got left with this decision to take the other path. But to your question, I think the difference between me and most people is that what I internalized within my conditioning was the ability to lean on my conviction, on if I can bring receipts, if I can prove to you, not that that's the goal, because my goal isn't to convince anybody of anything, but if I can plant enough seeds in people to help them see that they're also problematic, then I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna lean into my conviction to do that, and that's kind of been my, for lack of a better word, my mantra throughout my whole life is just I'm just gonna do me, and if you want to be a part, cool. If you know, cool. Not everybody's my audience, and I had to also understand, which I think a lot of people have to understand, that when we are doing this work, the job isn't to convince anybody, it's to inspire. And those who don't want to hear, I'll block you. I don't care. I like my social platforms, they're my household, right? We protect who we allow in our house. Same thing for social media.
Yeah, that's so well. I love how you say that. That's so well said. We don't have to allow that nasty, closed-minded, whatever word you want to use in. The
Right.
unfortunate thing is, it's so easier said than done.
Yes.
There are times, I know for me, when I was unraveling my growing up and my own harm put forward towards my own community and other people and the work I did, all this sort of stuff, like when you're down, you're very, very low, and no one can kick you harder than yourself. But when that
Absolutely.
negativity starts to come in and those people push more of, oh, you're just, angry, Kieran. Why are you so angry? Stop being angry. And you're like, okay, how do I say, yeah, you're right, I am, but also not allow that to consume me, because my anger isn't you telling me I'm angry. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's like this weird dance that you're doing with everything we've been taught growing up, as you said. And not all of us have that kind of conviction in the way that you talk about it. And so this is why I love having, that I love that AI found you on social media too, because those of us that don't have that voice yet, or we're just building it, your voice is so helpful in saying, okay, hang in there, stay there, follow what you believe, question this. It's okay to question that, but don't let those so-called haters be the ones to dictate it for you. And so
100%.
you did find your calling because you speak so well, and your mom definitely raised up, I would assume, with the positive word, maybe not stubborn, determined, man who's like, hang on a second. And
Yeah.
so I think that's lovely. And when we come into the world of AI, how would you say that if AI reflects the people who built it, which yesterday I had the opportunity to hear you on a panel through the Calgary Black Chamber Society. So they had this whole AI panel of Beauty and the Beast and lots of things. I left there with lots of questions and thoughts rumbling through. And so my question to you is, if AI reflects the people who built it, and you've already sort of talked about how society not bringing the influence there, how do your own cultural roots, your own experiences, your identity show up in your work today? How would you share that with us?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. What I realized early on in doing this work, so for a little context, I'll wrap this all in together. I was invited to do beta testing for Chat with 3.5 back in November 2022. Not sure exactly how the hell they found me or how I even got there, but regardless, they were doing 50 people a day to test the system out. And as an activist and somebody who's been doing decolonial studies and social science studies since his 30s, I knew that this system, as I was speaking to it, was going to change the world because it was the new Google. I knew it blew me away. But I immediately saw the biases within it because I recognized them, because this is the work that I do, right? In conversations. And immediately it left me with this holy shit moment where I was like, well, how do I build something that doesn't do this? Or who do I talk to for them to change it? And then my entrepreneurial brain kicked in and said, no. Like, fuck them. Like, don't even talk to them about it, because they're not going to change squat. Build something, figure it out. And so that led me down a rabbit hole of connecting with all the decolonial specialists around the world that helped me build what I built today, which was Justice AI. But what I realized, to your point, is that it's not actually even a people problem, it's a system problem. The system of white supremacy protects itself because it doesn't reveal itself to you so openly, right? When we are having these conversations of bias all together, even our conversation just a few minutes ago about how bias manifests. For me, I had to tell myself, in this system, oppression, bigotry, discrimination, these are not opinions, they're violence. What people don't understand is that violence manifests not only physically, but through language. Language is violence if it's oppressive, if it's bigoted, if it's all of these things. And so I immediately said, my lived experience as an Afro-Indigenous man who represents 0.7% of the population alone, it has no voice in the system. And so what do I need to do? So I went down this rabbit hole in the work that I do, and I realized that these companies were patching up bias by putting in these little programs and these little things that will make it sound more neutral and less oppressive. But what I realized is that we had to build the system completely from scratch, because there was no representation from our communities in there. And that's what we had to do. So that's what Justice AI is. It's a culmination and a contribution from all of these communities that I specifically reached out to and communicated with. And they contributed over 30 years each of their knowledge to build a decolonial data set that can identify where bias is inside of wherever I program it in, and decolonize it. And I know those are giant words for a lot of people who are probably like, what the fuck is he talking about? But I'm telling you, like, this is all intentional. I say all this to say that it took communities from all around the world to build this thing, because those were the voices that were left out and that are left out in massive GPTs and language models.
It's like the metaphor to what we need and don't have in the real world. When we're needing to burn it all down and rebuild from the ground up. And here we are talking about the world of technology, which is the new world. And I think the way that you talk about it goes back to even yesterday's panel discussion, where there was lots of talk about how people of color, the BIPOC community are always invited. They're it's like the last minute invite to the party, essentially. Like, oh, maybe we should have so-and-so at the table, or these guests can come, so why not invite this person? And a lot of what ends up happening is, and I remember this even in the not-for-profit that I worked at, there was a diversity committee, and 2 white people were running it. And I was one of few people of color, and maybe one time they called me to consult with me. And consultation is really just for shoot the shit, throw spaghetti at the wall, figure it out. But at the end of the day, there's no power in that because there's going to be their decision. And I think
100%.
this is what we're up against in the world of AI. And sitting there yesterday, I was like, okay, I only know, like, if people are listening, not watching, I'm just putting my little fingers together, saying the tiniest little bit. I know nothing. And so I can't sit here and say I know everything. But what I feel I'm understanding more and more about is there is such a parallel process to the real world. And like you said, it's not the people, it's the system. And if we've all been bred under this system of white supremacy, then of course, when I go into ChatGPT and say, what's the safest place to travel? It's simplest question. They're not going to consider anyone but the white man traveling the world, essentially,
Yes.
right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's like just to connect to everyone. We all use it's the simplest place, ChatGPT, for simple things in life versus, of course, there's more complicated systems out there that some of us don't know about that you would know more about. So I just think it is around us. And I think we can't be naive to the fact that it doesn't impact us on a day-to-day level. And I think it's just starting somewhere, and us, talking to people like you, going to these panel discussions and learning more about, okay, where is the impact and how can I be more aware? So, but maybe at this point, what I can do in just pausing and asking is a little bit about your title. Like, I think a lot maybe will come out of that. So you are a social scientist in decolonial tech. Very powerful. And break it down for all of us, like we're 2 and don't really fully get what any of this means. So, because I think there's a lot in this title, in what you've already said, and I think where we're about to go.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because you're right. My title alone holds the key of what needs to be adopted, in my honest opinion, to free all of us from this occupation of white supremacy that we're in. So I am a decolonial specialist and ethicist. So I deal in, my job requires me to look at what the world was like before settler colonialism and the systems that settler colonialism imposed on every single one of us around the world. Doesn't matter where you were born, we are all the byproduct of settler white supremacy, whether you're in the Middle East, or which is a horrible colonial term in itself, right, to Latin America, South America, to all these imposed borders, we are the byproduct of this system. And so if what I do ultimately is I juggle the duality, and I said this last night, of how I educate my audience on both AI and ethics and bias. And there's a lot of disinformation and there's a lot of tension because we have all been conditioned by the system of white supremacy to believe what we believe. And so when anything counteracts those beliefs, we feel threatened, we feel attacked, we feel like, holy shit, what is he talking about? He's rewriting history and all of these things, which is not wrong, but it's also the whole picture is what I'm offering. So what I try to tell people is that you have to understand that every single one of our social biases are harmful social biases. I'm not talking about like the difference between wanting pepperoni over pineapple on a pizza. I'm talking about how you see, what comes up with you when you see a Black person, what comes up when you see an Indigenous person, what comes up when you see an Asian person or a Middle Eastern person or an Indian person or whatever the case may be. And I'm using these titles loosely because this is what resonates with people. All of those biases come from this colonial white supremacy. These are not things that existed before colonization. And when I say that, people were like, well, that's bullshit because before colonization, there's been oppression and slavery and all these things. And that's true. But what I hope people understand is that colonization, European white settlers, they codified all of this oppression into law, global law. and they codified it through the church, and they conditioned its people. They didn't just colonize land, they colonized minds. They colonized the way we see neurodivergent people, the way we see the queer population, right? They demonized all of these other things that were not cis heteronormative to a white man to that standard. And so if settler colonialism is then the byproduct, or is then the what contributes to bias, then decoloniality is the antithesis. It's the medicine, it's the remedy. It's not its own bias, it's just showing you what is actually happening, right? It's diagnosing the problem. Bias is the cancer, it's the disease. And so we have to unroot all of it and then rebuild after that. So that's the decolonial part. The social science part then, which there are not a lot of people who intersect the two. You either have people who are professionals in CRT, critical race theory, and decoloniality, or just social scientists. But if you're just looking at social scientists or social science without the decolonial lens, then it's all based on Western frameworks and you're just perpetuating Western ideology. So what I do is I blend the two, and then I then examine how the system of white supremacy that which we've all inherited impacts every single one of us, no matter where we are in the world, and how it manifests even within white people, right? So the third component of what I do then educates white people to help them understand that, hey, don't forget, race is not only a social construct, doesn't exist, and which is why whiteness is a system. Racism is a system, right? That also hurts white people. It's unsustainable. It's why we have the suicide rates we do, why keeping up with the Joneses causes white CEOs to lose their ever-loving mind. If you don't make six figures or have that car, forget about it. It's all about pleasing women with money and status and power. All of that is colonial white supremacy in action. And so whiteness is then a system that impacts every single one of us. And then what happens when I go there is that it gives white people skin in the game to say, holy shit, now I actually have something that I'm fighting for. Because what they also forget is that the system of white supremacy has stripped Europeans from their own lineages because they were Celtic, they were Baltic, they were Slavic, they were Irish, they were Celts, they were all of these things. And then they were replaced with white for status. And so when people understand the whole picture of what I do, they're like, oh my God, okay, now I get it. And then it just ultimately comes around to offer healing for people. Because I think that's what we are, very unhealthy, unhealed, unprocessed, running around with our traumas, just throwing trauma at each other. And we can't get to where we need to be because of it. So I carry a lot in what I do with that title. Because that's where my content comes from. All of it stems from, once you see how the system of white supremacy has injected itself in every aspect of our life, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mm-mm. Everything is conditioned by it. And my job is to deconstruct that shit for the next 30 years.
Man, oh man. Where do we go from here, right? Like that, it's like, can you teach a seminar in classes, honestly? Because like you said this at the beginning, you use the word inspire. And I think when I connect that word to what you're saying, and you're talking about healing and you're trying to help everyone, including white people, understand their role, but also how they're connected in this. And I think it really does connect us all as a human race when we can look at it from that perspective. And I think that's out of sight, out of mind for many people. Like, I'll be the first to admit, right, as a person of color, and definitely for white people as well, it's like a very big disconnect in terms of, oh yeah, this is the impact. And I remember you wrote about this a little while ago too, about how settler colonization impacted a lot of those, European communities as well, because people were stripped from their own culture, and then there's no land to really connect to and to know and to fight for. So you really, it's like when you don't have a solid value system and you're like, sure, I'll do that, and then you're wishy-washy. And I think the way you put it helps us understand, okay, like it's bigger than what we think it is, and we have a lot more to know. And I think it's important that we understand it, because then we can actually, all of us, work together start to that's not your job in the next 30 years. We all have a role in this, and it shows up in how we raise our kids, how we have these conversations. The list goes on and on and on. And
100%.
right now we're just, on social media where all the races, all the communities, we're just in our bubbles breaking it down because we're only starting to understand as language allows us to around, okay, as a South Asian community, how colonization impacts me and my young kids today. But I think, like you said, there's more to it in terms of all of us are connected on a global level. And so if you could reach out, like you want to inspire people, you want people to leave with this knowledge of, okay, like what's my role in this? For people who think, we're just a bunch of conspiracy theorists and out to lunch and, need to take our medicine and whatnot, what's the thing to do? How do you have those conversations? I know you can't rationalize with the irrational person. So I'm not talking about extremes on either ends. I'm talking about those of us in the middle that are, losing friendships, impacting relationships because we don't know how to walk that path together. We're kind of in our own lane.
There's a real tension there. And I think that you're touching on something that we struggle with, because by nature, we're conditioned to believe like, well, you should believe what I believe and I should convince you of what I believe.
Yeah.
And that what I try to leave people with is to remember that in this conversation, it is okay to have boundaries. It is okay to protect your peace. It is okay to remember that not everybody's going to follow you in the journey that you're going on. And what happens is that when we started our own deconstruction, it happened to me. I say lost, but thousands of people, especially like if you remember, let me take you back to Trump's first presidency, right? In the States, it was not only Trump's presidency, it was Black Lives Matter came out. George Floyd was murdered. The world revolted. I believe wholeheartedly that the world had its first racial awakening, right? And what happened is everybody scrambled. They didn't know what to do. So they jumped on the ball of DEI. I'm going to say this specifically. We hear this term collective liberation being thrown out a lot when it comes to DEI work and bigotry. What people don't understand is that if you don't involve liberating white people in this fight as well, then it's not going to work. We're talking about the collective whole of humanity. We are all imprisoned by this damn system, right? And we've had the wrong language because people don't understand that. People have never had the conversation until just recently about how the system of white supremacy impacts white people as well. And it's not to just say like, I have to convince white people now. That's not what I'm saying. It's like you and I talked about earlier. We're seed planters. When the soil is ready and when the individual is ready to absorb and hear the information, then it is up to that person to decide. There's way much more out here that I need to realize. Maybe I should listen more. And I see it in the thousands. I have a huge platform online on all my platforms. I see thousands of comments of white people who are like, your article literally saved my life. Because I had no idea. And I get this comment probably the most out of white people, in addition to the N-word and all the slurs that I get too.
Of course.
But the white folks who are like, this article literally saved my life, I've heard that probably 100 times just since January, because I did a whole series on whiteness. My point in saying all this is that there are steps and methods that we have to recondition ourselves to operate from, to remember that your job is not to convince anybody of anything. That is not the job, because that is initially where every single one of us goes to. And then we beat ourselves up because people aren't reciprocating. They're not listening. And instead of just closing that door and just being like, we're just never going to go there with that person, that's not where they're at. And that can look a million different ways. I can block them. I can cut them off my life. I can set boundaries. I can keep minimal conversations. I did it with my family. I've done it with friends. You got to do what you got to do. The problem is that when we commit to doing this work, it activates a sense of loneliness that we're not ready for. And then what happens is you grieve. And so you're grieving relationships that you wish you thought you had, And now you're traveling alone, and that shit gets lonely. And then you feel like I'm the only person screaming this. Now I look like the psychopath on the concrete, holding my Bible, preaching the word on a busy street when nobody wants to listen to me. That's what you feel and look like to you, right? But then what happens? What I discovered, and I'm telling you, I'm gonna paint the whole picture here of how I know that is not accurate. Is that when you lead with your conviction, when you dedicate yourself to leading with your purpose, your passion, your vision, and say, fuck this, I now know I have receipts that I can bring and educate other people, and I'm just gonna give out my brilliance to the world. What happens is the algorithm finds you and your people. It starts connecting you with people out of the blue that's like, dude, I just found your podcast, or I just found your article, or I just found your LinkedIn. Since August of last year to yesterday, I'm at 19,800 followers on LinkedIn. I don't do this for the numbers, but it's data. And what it tells me is that since August of last year, I grew 17,000 LinkedIn followers talking about anti-racism, decoloniality, anti-oppression in the widest social media app on the world. What the hell does that tell you? Right? So it tells me people are hungry for this information. They're ready to hear it because it's also not finger pointing. It calls out and it holds racists accountable for sure, because I'm sassy like that, and I'm petty. But at the end of the day, my messaging hits the mark because it's reaching audiences that have never been reached before. And so I say all of this to say that it's never going to be perfect. I am going to miss the mark. I am going to leave things out. People are never going to be happy with 100% of my thing. And I don't care, because my point is to plant seeds. And so what I'm actually writing a book called Social Gardening, where we're talking about what this looks like in a gardening sense, as a giant metaphor to use, because it's all interconnected. How we're so universal, we're so connected through stardust and all of those things without getting woo. But there's an absolute truth to how we're connected into the way we nurture ourselves and each other versus how we nurture Mother Nature. It's an identical parallel, right? We're all soil, we're all seed planters, right? And so some of us are the farmer, some of us are the plant, right? We each have a role to play. We each contribute to the ecosystem, and we have to be intentional about how we engage with each other more and more. And this was the longest answer to your question.
No,
but
oh my God, let it be even longer. I love it.
I feel like it's not simple, but
exactly.
This is how I guide my audience to help them understand, like, this is what we're talking about here. This is how deep this goes.
Yeah.
This is how intentional we have to be, right? And so it's not easy, but I promise you, like, when you commit to it, when you commit to seeing the world for what it really is and the system we inherited and didn't ask for, you are given a choice. You also can operate from whatever capacity you have. Some people have capacity to do what I do. Some people have capacity to do what you do. Some people don't have capacity at all because they're just surviving. Mm-hmm. But if they choose to commit, I feel like it's a select many that have the capacity to really commit and move forward. And it's going to look a million and one different ways. But if the messaging is the same, which is to dismantle this damn system one way or another. And then, my goal is that 1 million people in 2 years will adopt Justice AI. And I will show it to you specifically outside of this, but I really am wanting people to try it out themselves. Imagine having a tool that for the first time gives you language to learn how to navigate oppression and bigotry and all of these things, and help you navigate and understand your role and what you're perpetuating, what you're causing. It's a whole paradigm shift that's happening. And that's, I think, where the power is.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit more about Justice GPT, right? Is that
Justice
because
AIGPT.
Like you said this really well yesterday when somebody asked, like, what can we do? What should we be doing? And you and the other panelists were like, all of our voices matter. So one voice connects to the other. And one of the things you had suggested was even on ChatGPT, like, push back, argue it, whatever AI platform we're using, help it understand, hold on a second, this is not exactly, you're talking to the wrong person, or this doesn't work for me as a black person or as a brown woman, you're bringing in misogyny, whatever it is, just push and push, because that data sticks, and it'll, again, I'm not tech language savvy,
You're
but the
right,
code,
though.
it helps the coding, and next time it'll remember when I go back in there and ask, and oh yeah, this woman said this last time, blah blah blah. And so it's understanding that. But I think, like, if we were to look at it from the perspective, even a young person who's just entering the world of technology and getting on Discord, getting on their whatever gaming systems that they do, Minecraft and all that, and my son going on AI and asking it whatever questions, like, where can we truly start? Like, what is one way we can contribute and be built, wake up a little and build some awareness? Sometimes I think self-awareness is a superpower to life, because not all of us have it and have access to it and get it. So if I'm someone who has zero awareness of any of this, what is one thing I can do to help myself get it a bit? And maybe that will bring us to you talking about your platform that you created.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that question, because it's a real question, and it leads to the reason why I built what I built. What I do say to a lot of people, and what I should have said yesterday to the audience is, and I think I may have touched on it, but it could be something as simple as Googling what decoloniality is, what even Google can understand about it, because Google is also biased. But going on YouTube and following creators, going on TikTok, going on social platforms that you are on, just put in the hashtag decoloniality, see who's talking about what, because that's really the fundamental of this entire conversation is decoloniality, decolonization, which are two separate things. But just listen to your favorite creators, find them out there, just really listen. Just don't even engage, just watch their videos, watch what they're saying, watch what the messaging is consistently, because a lot of people have a lot to say, and a lot of people might, but it also takes this level of discernment, which is also not a natural key thing. So I always encourage people to remember to always read the comments, read what's coming up for you, even if it's complete polar opposite. Find out what people are arguing about. Find out what people are saying. When they argue, are they providing counter narratives? Are they clarifying, or are they just activated and angry? Because there's two different realities there. So it's not an easy journey to figure this out. It's not easy, but Google, YouTube, use the things that you have available to you, social media. There are tons of decolonial specialists on TikTok who are also on Instagram and sometimes on YouTube, that they know what they're talking about. And so even anti-racism, equity, find out what oppression and bigotry looks like across the board outside of race, right? Really deep dive. And I think that is a solid way to start, just to open your mind into the conversation and just breathe and remember that it's not going to be comfortable. It's just not, right? It's going against everything that we've truly been conditioned to believe. And I just think it's what led me to say, you know what, there aren't many tools out here that provide a starting point. And to be honest, I hated being that guy on a panel that said, subscribe to my GPT, because
I hear you.
It's like the ultimate
you're
pitch.
One of one out there. So
I'm one of one that offers a solution.
It's a knowledge house, right? Like this community, whether it be Calgary Black Chambers, other BIPOC communities, get together to be knowledge house builders. And so to me, it's not really being the cheesy person sitting outside a Canadian Tire selling Girl Guide cookies or whatever. It's better and more important in my mind, because
For sure.
what I don't know. And we're all trying to go to a place of, now I know what I don't know. And then maybe it'll be, I know what I know, right? But who knows? So it's like just starting in that place, like of, oh, okay, that for me, that, when I started following you, yesterday made it even more clear about what that platform is, because it's a lot. It's overwhelming. And this is my message to the community as well, is I'm being open with it, because I think sometimes when you get asked in a classroom, do you have a question? No one puts their hand up, because we all assume I'll be stupid if I put my hand up and ask. And
Exactly.
I think the point of even, me saying I know nothing is reminding us, like, we all start somewhere. Some of us know way more than me. And having people like you in the community sort of helping us learn, I think is the key. But like you said, we have to be willing and
Yes.
and okay with what we might find, when we enter these words in our search engine. It's like back in the day when we saw inappropriate videos that we didn't want to come across, like
The same feeling.
yeah, I am almost like rather watch those videos again that I didn't want to watch that involved cups and things, it's like, oh my gosh, because that discomfort was way better than but that's a reality. That discomfort is also, I always feel, maybe not always, but maybe nowadays I feel, when I get uncomfortable in the room, my heart's racing, I'm like, oh, this is just the meaning of change is happening.
Yes.
I'm growing. Something is like, that's legit growing pains. That's okay. It's okay. Let it come in, and then I'll get to the other side, because like you said, we want to stop and our defense mechanisms go up, and now we're disconnected as a community, and we're only as good as our weakest link, right? So we have to kind of own up and say, I'm that weakest link. So people help me, community help me.
I tell you, I'm gonna add to that, because what's funny to me, I always revert back to when I started my decolonization process, my deconstruction process. I had a mentor who, I'm neurodivergent and ADHD dyslexic, and what happens when you hyperfocus on social injustice across the board, you feel it more than the average Joe, because especially if you're a person of global majority, you internalize it more, you feel it more. And the same is true when you deconstruct and you realize that you've been part of the problem. That's even a worse discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a mentor who was like, that's okay. He was like, and he said exactly what you said. He was like, that just means that you've just opened the door to growth. And that is your nervous system reacting to newness and new ideas the same way you would when the first time you jump on a roller coaster, the first time you say I love you to your first girlfriend, the first kiss you've had, the first time you've had, like all of that is your nervous system reacting to something so terrifying and new. There's nothing different. And when he equated it to the things that I've experienced 1,000 times over before, then I was like, you're absolutely fucking right. What am I actually worried about? And so every time I got that feeling, it was less and less and less and less, because I remembered I've already been through this emotion before. I've already been through the scary part again. So if you can remind yourself of like all of the horrifying things that you've accomplished in your life and have overcome, from something as simple as the first kiss to a new job interview to, all of the things. We've been here. We've done that. There's nothing different about it. The only problem is that we've been conditioned to believe that we shouldn't be there. Like we should know better. So I always tell people there's a difference between being educated and being conditioned to believe a lie. Right. And when you understand that we've all been conditioned and only a very select few of us have actually taken the time to actually educate, then you realize that the actual education looks completely different than what you've been conditioned to believe. And that shit is horrifying for the majority of people. We're not ready for that conversation. And so I just wanted to preface that, because the takeaway from that is that whatever comes up and whatever gets activated from you is no different than what you've already have overcome in your entire life. Even by the age of 10, you can imagine how many things you've experienced and how many fears you've had at 10 years old. I remember me being 10 and with my upbringing. So it's just a matter of understanding and having a broader perspective and understanding of like what you're actually dealing with. And so, so this is what my tool offers. This is what Justice AI offers. I built it inside of ChatGPT, and I'm segueing into it here because we were talking about Justice AI. And so it's like yesterday, I asked the entire crowd, I said, how many of you use ChatGPT? Everybody raised their hand. And the only thing I could say in 15 seconds was stop using it and switch to my Justice
Yeah.
AIGPT.
Yeah.
Because what I did is I programmed it, it not only uses the data from ChatGPT, from OpenAI, but I programmed this decolonial data set that we've built collectively with people from all over the world. And so what happens is you ask it a question and it pulls the information from chat, but it uses the decolonial data set to identify where the bias is, and deconstructs it and reformulates it in real time. So you're getting the most least biased answer possible, which pretty much hits about a 97% accuracy rate for every response. And what it does, it talks to you just like ChatGPT, except that I programmed it with an empathy matrix and kindness and support. So it becomes your hype person. She, and I call her she, I call her Jai. Jai uplifts you and she encourages you for the questions that you ask. You give it context and you tell it you're a white person who's trying to figure out something about whatever. She's not going to be like, I can't believe you're asking me that question, right? Like, she's like, I appreciate the courage that you have, asking such a thing. Let's dive into that. And what she does is she gives you historical precedents and decolonial social science to back up her claims of where these things came from. And you can cite sources. So it's like education in real time. It's deconstruction, and she's literally holding your hand when you're talking to it about whatever. And so I have now about 150 users around the world who are doing incredible work with it. And not only in their professional lives, but in their family dynamic, right? How do I talk to my kids about racism? How do I talk to them about X, Y, and Z, right? We're a mixed blended family with a stepdad and who's their biological dad is Korean and Filipino or this, that, and the other. And like, how do I, respect their culture and do that? Like all of those questions, like you can use it to help guide you in how to build a more inclusive household and more inclusive culture in your business and your organization. Like I built it for all of it. And so we have never had, I can honestly say with pride and ridiculousness that all circulates and all the emotions, that we've never had a tool until now do this. And so when you asked earlier, like, where do we go? Where do we start? Start there. The cool thing about it is that if you don't have the money to pay for ChatGPT and you use a free account and you can figure out how to get a $20 account for Justice AI, it's an additional $20 add-on to ChatGPT. You could just pay for Justice AI and then use it with limited usage throughout the day. It'll cut you off, but it'll still give you access to it. And so some people start there, and then once they get more financially situated where they can afford that, then they can purchase the ChatGPT Plus for $20, and then they get unlimited access. But I also created an affiliates program. So you get 4 people to sign on a month, you get 50% off for each sale. Then you don't have to pay for ChatGPT or Justice AI. And everybody, everybody knows
it's
everybody.
Like a Spotify account when you can have
It's a Spotify account.
People on it with you, and you're all splitting
Exactly.
the $11 a month or whatever it is,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I keep telling people, it's like if you're gonna protest Starbucks and Netflix and all these things, at least invest in a tool that's literally doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, and if you become an affiliate and you get your community to be a part of it, then you're making money as well. And you're paying for the accounts. And ultimately you don't have to pay for it. I've got like 5 users who invited people, and now they're not even paying for any of it because they're getting paid monthly. And so now money's going back to the communities, right? It's also like this weird mix of, I'm building a liberation system inside a capitalist system, which is also like a contradiction within itself. But what I remind people is that the money that we bring in also percentage goes to the people who help build it every month and the communities that we're serving. So if redistribution isn't part of your process, then it's actually not an ethical tool because the money has to go back to the people, and a percentage goes to us so that we can scale and take this. So like, we're juggling a lot of realities, and it's not a perfect tool. Yes, it's built in a capitalist system, but the purpose of it is to help you break free from your conditioning. And I think that ultimately that's worth it, in my opinion.
So for you, what gives you hope about where tech and justice can go from here?
Yeah, I carry a lot of hope. I think I'm a pretty grotesque optimist when it comes to the world. It pisses people off because I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I do, and just about everything. I try to, at least. The hope that I carry is this: is that when we look at social impact movements, we've come a long way in a short time as a society. We're still a very, very new society. And I think where we are collectively, when you look outside of MAGA bubbles and people who believe in oppression, the majority of folks understand that it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And we've never, like now more than ever, and when we talk about our upbringing, we know how far we've come since the 80s and 90s. To me, in a 30-year span, to have that much of a consciousness shift and to understand like where we're headed, I think is pretty rapid. So if you think about how quickly AI works in an oppressive lens where it amplifies bias to 50 million biased outputs a day, is perpetuating bias at mass scale. What happens if people adopt an ethical AI that does the opposite? It would have the same impact, if not more.
Yeah.
I see it every day. I'm telling you, in the 150 people that are in community, they send me messages every day of success stories of what's happening with this. That's 150 people with probably 1,000 use cases. So imagine 1 million people who adopt it. You literally have a paradigm shift overnight, thanks to and like I said last night, I'm not a tech bro. I understand the damaging impacts of AI and how problematic it can be. But when I literally have built a system that's changing everything, I also can see what that looks like at mass scale. So I can run probability matrices and come up with all the numbers, but just from the simple 150 people using it every day, for them to have thousands of use cases of the change that it's happening, and their minds are blown and their lives are changed and their families' lives are changed, what does that talk about for the next generations that we're building just for those users alone?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking like now more than ever, if we have this tool that isn't going anywhere, which is AI, especially language models, then we each have a responsibility to contribute using to these ethical systems. It might cost you a little bit more, but at the end of the day, what are we really investing in for our futures, right? That's what the question is. It's like, how intentional are we when we're spending? And if we are really surviving and money is an issue, then why do you still have a Netflix account? Why are you still paying for Amazon?
Yeah,
Honestly,
totally.
what these companies
the
are
Starbucks
doing.
app and I think the other thing too, like that I would imagine you're up against too is, okay, there's a subscription fee, and then like you said, I can go on ChatGPT and have access to that in a free way. But then when I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm also like, this is also part of the patterns of history and the way the world operates that we don't always realize we're falling into those traps of like, here's some free drugs, kid, and then now you're hooked and now you got to go back and get some more. I know I'm like the worst at my analogies.
No, that's fantastic.
One marijuana, please. But it's like, you have a challenge because you've built this great, wonderful, beautiful thing, but you're up against, we do look at capitalistic views and consumerism. You have something that people can use for free, but that free is damaging, and we don't realize that. We're like, well, I'm not paying for that. But then that when I go in and chat with ChatGPT, the information I'm getting is keeping me very limited and, supporting that deep-seated white supremacy that I only know. And I don't know, it's the germs conversation. You don't realize they're there, but they're impacting us. And these sorts of things are going on all around us every day, and we don't realize it. So people are hooked to that because it is free, or the limited version of it. I know you can still pay and get the fancy version, but most people are going to do so I'm just like sitting here thinking about, maybe you want to add to that, or I'm out to lunch, but I don't think I am out to lunch. So
No, I think that's a valid point, and you're 100% right. And what I always tell people, it's like when you know that bias is coming up in your AI, it's going to take you at least 5 to 6 prompts to get the answer that you want, which you're evaporating more water when you're using
Yeah.
AI excessively, then why not just sign up to one that gives you the answer that you need right off the rip? You know what I mean? Like, it really condenses your usage of AI too,
Yeah.
so that you're getting what you need immediately. So you don't have to keep arguing with it to be like, well, that was sexist. I think you missed the mark there,
Yeah.
right? Or that was super racist. And then you get into another conversation that spirals into another conversation. When we're even, one of the biggest arguments that I get is, well, how are you solving for the AI ecosystem problem, like how it's impacting the environment? And I'm like, I'm not, because I built it in ChatGPT. I have no control over how they manage their data centers. That's not what this is for, ultimately. Also, AI is not the problem. It's capitalism. So unless we want to talk about real systems and the problem, we really need to go there. But if you're not ready to go there, don't even bring it up as an argument, because you're not even contributing to, like,
it's the
whatever.
loopholes that they like, those loophole people.
Yeah, and it's not an answer in defense or for me getting pissed off about it, but it's really to help people reorient where their concerns should be, right? Because we keep saying, oh, the environment, oh, the environment. I'm like, yeah, but you're not saying anything about the capitalism that allows this to happen, right? The capitalism that's extracting from the environment just for growth purposes, right? Like, you're not actually fighting on the right fight here, right? And so, I mean, it's such a broad, giant conversation, and I'm okay with people who don't want to use it for whatever reasons. Is that you're not there, you're not ready, you don't understand it, and if you're not my customer or my client or my community member, oh well, that's fine. I'll see you when I see you.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you in that sense. Absolutely. If you could rewrite the story of AI through like a decolonial lens, what would your opening line be?
I could rewrite the story of AI through a decolonial lens. Yeah. You mean in terms of how it was developed?
Yeah, but all of it. There's so much to it. So whatever pops up for you.
Yeah. I wish that the story started like, once upon a time, the collective population of the world came together to create a system that understood the perspectives of all life on Earth.
Ooh,
to give a full story.
There's a show for you, Netflix. Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Okay, I'm loving the conversation and I don't want it to end. So I know that we do have to get there. So maybe we can start wrapping it up with just like a few more, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So one of the things I always like to ask my guests is, if you were going to put your middle fingers up to a social issue, what would that be? What would you, and why? What do you want to put your middle fingers up to? This is your chance.
Yeah, my middle finger goes up to the system of white supremacy, because I think it's so insidious and so invisible. And what people fail to recognize is that patriarchy, misogyny, anti-LGBTQ ideologies, all of that stuff is white supremacy. So when we inherit those beliefs in communities of color, we are agents of white supremacy. And it has nothing to do with the social construct of race. It has everything to do with that goddamn system that we're trying to dismantle. So that's where my middle finger goes up to.
Both mine. Well, if my toes could do it too, they would too. I'm right there with you, but I'm not that flexible or whatever you're supposed to be with that. Okay, so Christian, I had a lot of questions for you today, and I feel like we went, one deeper, and we had a wonderful conversation and connected your upbringing to the work you're doing, and, the call out to the rest of us to, more invite us to reconsider how we are accessing technology, whether we want to or not. It is before us. Yesterday, we talked briefly about one impact that has on people of color, particularly darker skinned people, is the facial recognition. You guys even mentioned, when we're in public washrooms using automated hand washing systems, and how sometimes the water doesn't turn on and we have to turn our hands around to our lighter side. And I literally looked at my husband and I'm like, so I'm not dead, because literally every time I'm in a bathroom, the dryers, and then there's always a lady next to me and I'm like, is this me? Like, what's going on? And she's usually a white lady is like, no, I don't know, mine's working fine. And like you don't realize it, or we're coming back from a vacation and God forbid it be like somewhere where I went and got even more tanned, and we're at the kiosk in immigration, and you're taking your picture and I'm holding up my family at 2 a.m. because, my husband will be like, well, look this way or move this way. And I'm like, I don't know why it's broken when it's my turn. And you're just like gaslit all day long. And you don't even
Yes.
realize about these things. And you don't even take a minute to think, could it be because of how the technology is coded, and it's the whole Band-Aid thing, right? White people Band-Aids. And we of all of us of color don't actually, I think many of us don't even realize half of this. And that's because, like you said, most of us are just trying to survive. And a lot of us are catching up to, the social issues and the issues in our community. So fair. But the reality is all of this is happening. Technology is among us. It's occurring, as we were saying at the beginning. And at some point, we have a responsibility to start to ask, where is it impacting me and where am I impacting it? And if you have anything you want to add to that particular part.
I have tons of shit to say about it, so I can talk to you for hours about it. What I love to do is I love to leave something with your listeners, whether they watch it or not. And this is an invitation to you to expand outside of the video too. Is when you share your video, of course, just give a highlight of those facts that we've talked about throughout this video, so people can understand, like, oh, maybe bias is something that I actually need to pay more attention to, right? Like, I love your reaction to the bathroom story, because it's most people in the room are like, I never even thought. But I also encourage your audience to always make a post of what they learn. Like today, I learned X, Y, and Z about bias. I had no idea that impact, even if that's the post, I had no idea that this was a thing. Just leave it at that and just watch what happens, right? Because ultimately what happens is it just sparks curiosity. We're all seed planters, right? And so my goal is that everybody just shares a little bit of what they learned just once. Even if it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, don't worry about it, because you just never know who's watching. You never know who needs to hear it. Mm-hmm. And that's how it works. That's how it spirals. And they become an extension of us.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would imagine for a lot of people sitting there yesterday, but definitely for me hearing that, and I'm sure for all of you up there, you're saying all the things because you believe, you've done your work, your research, all that. And I think it's very meaningful to know, like, hey, one person, 10 people, whatnot. But you don't know when you walk into that room and what you're going to leave people with. And you and I were kind of actually talking about that before we started recording too. You don't know who you're going to impact or not. Like I was saying to you, I started following you on social media. I really appreciated you helping me develop my voice, helping it get stronger. And I love that I got to see you in real time at this panel conversation. And I'm glad that you talked to me yesterday when I was like, oh my gosh. And you were saying this too. You're like, you don't know when you're going to make an impact on people. You didn't know that I was going to show up and fangirl you yesterday. And you didn't know who came to you after the panel, and you all had people lined up afterwards wanting to have a deeper conversation. So you can tell that we're hungry and we are showing up. And like you said, even just your subscriptions and followers from last summer till now, a lot is happening in the world, and these patterns connect us all. They're not just isolated moments in history or in these events, whether it's watching a Hollywood movie that's planting their own seeds in a way, like all of this is happening. And I think when we widen our lens a bit, we start to realize, oh, okay, and I get to play a part in this story, and I can decide if I want to be an extra in this movie or I want to, be the best friend of the person starring or whatever, right? So I like to do main character energy, but hey, that's just, me. But
I love that analogy.
So, a good one hit, yay.
They all
just throw things out there and you never know, right? But I just think, like it was really meaningful yesterday to hear you and your panelists talk about things that are impacting us and the questions. People are worried about, is AI going to take my job tomorrow? Right. And people are worried about these things, and there's lots of reasons where those kind of worries come from. But like you said, bias is everywhere. It's embedded in all of us. And I think one little thing that we can leave with, right, helps us sort of wake up to, oh, I didn't realize I have this kind of bias. All these intersectionalities are meeting us all
It's
day
heavy.
long. So
It's heavy.
it's heavy for sure. And like, how do you spend your days studying, bias and talking to us about this and all of that, like with inequity, power, like how do you take care of your own mind and spirit with this heavy topic every day?
Yeah, I sleep like a baby. I do, and it's really weird. And I think a lot of, I also grew up with a lot of trauma and a lot of traumatic environments. And this stuff to me is like a cakewalk, which I understand. Even talking about it probably activates a lot of trauma for people in the way that I faced trauma
Yeah.
dealing with crime and, poverty as in my youth. So I have a lot more resilience. But at the end of the day, I think what happens is that I'm left with a state of awareness. There's a power in having the state of awareness where, at least if you understand where the issues come from, then you're left with a choice of how do I examine my bandwidth to figure out, well, what am I able to contribute? Luckily, I can contribute a ton, and I do. But if I wasn't able to, that's okay too. I would just be able to be like, you know what? All I can handle is just knowing the truth. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's powerful, because what happens when you know the truth is you're not perpetuating shit. You then operate from a different lens. So either way, whether you're at a place of just, I'm okay being aware, or I'm aware and I'm willing to give everything, I protect myself that way by just being very self-aware of what am I. Sometimes it gets a lot. Don't get me wrong. There's sometimes I'm in the news and I read so much about what's happening all over the world, and I'm like, I need a beer and I just need to sit down and chill, and I need to spend time with my family, my love and my kids. And I think that self-awareness piece is just ultimately the key. Once you
Yeah.
figure out what you're capable of, what capacity you have, and that it's not going to always look the same every day, you just have to remember that, right? But if you could spend some time in the morning to have self-awareness, to be like, where am I at today? How much bullshit can I encounter? How much can I give? Can I give anything? And if the answer is no for 6 months, a year, 2 years, that's also okay, right? This is an individual fight, and we each have to contribute in a very responsible way as well.
Yeah, that's well said. Anything you wish we had talked about or I had asked you about today that maybe I haven't brought up that you would like to leave us with today?
My gosh, I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover. More than I anticipated. This has been amazing.
Oh, well, I
Thank
feel the
you.
same.
Yeah, thank you for offering the extra time, because these conversations get crammed into sometimes 15, 30-minute conversations. And as you see, like, we could talk about this for
I
hours.
know.
There's never ending, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, what I think I'd like to leave everyone with is that I'm all over social media. I'm all over Substack,
Yes. Drop
LinkedIn,
your
all the
plug.
things.
That was next. Thank you.
So Zacateco is what I go through because of my Zacatecan ancestry, but it's Zacatecho, like the tech in there on purpose, obviously. So it's Zacateco at LinkedIn, Substack, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and pretty much every other social platform that you could think of.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well for everyone too, so
Thank
that
you.
they have access to it. Please go follow Christian. You will always leave with something, if not a lot more than just a little. And I really hope everyone can also get an opportunity to check out your new platform with Justice GPT there. What do you call her? You call her
Jai.
Jai. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So go hang out with Jai. I'm going to get to know Jai as well. I'm curious about those conversations too, coming from the world that I'm coming from and how that goes.
Yeah.
And maybe, you'll come back because like you said, there's a lot to talk about. And so maybe we can have you back. And this is just a see you until next time instead of a farewell or goodbye.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
encourage your users to ask questions wherever you post this podcast.
Yeah.
Leave questions and comments, and if they want to know more about anything, like, they can either reach out to me, or
Yes.
I could do another episode. We could probably have you on my podcast, whatever works.
That's amazing. Can you tell us about your podcast before you go?
Yeah, so
if we want to tune in.
Yeah, it's called Cape On. It's a tech activist podcast. Cape On used to be a slogan I used to have because I always thought of myself as a bit of a superhero, not for any hubris, but just because I've survived so much shit.
Yeah.
But fighting social justice, we're all superheroes in our own right. And so it's Cape On, the tech activist podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, all the things. And it's me talking about the work of decolonizing AI in real time and bringing social justice into tech specifically.
I love that. Yes, I'm going to tune in. Hopefully, everyone else will too. Thank you again for sitting with me, giving me your time. I really appreciate everything I'm getting from you. And like you said, to everyone that's part of this conversation today, these conversations are literally just door openers. We're just scratching the surface. So if you have anything you want to add to, ask. You now know where you can find Christian. You always know where you can find me. And we do hope that you reach out. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much.